So let me welcome in our studio an expert, Mr. Zygmunt Dzięciołowski, who is a founding member of Open Democracy Russia. Mr. Dzięciołowski, from all of these listed ways that Russia is trying to destabilize Europe, which do you think at the moment is the most effective?
Well, we understand that Russia is very unhappy about the European countries' behavior. They are not very happy for one very simple reason. European countries, with few exceptions, support Ukraine in its war with Russia. So, okay, you send a message to the European states, you have to negotiate with us and you have to give some concessions. We are right, we have legitimate claims targeting Ukraine, maybe you do something about it. But European governments don't want to listen to this kind of Russian persuasion. So, in response, you try to do nasty things to make them to reconsider. Maybe their citizens would be unhappy about those acts of provocation and will appeal to their government, listen, do something about these Russian acts of provocation because we cannot live our regular peaceful life. Do something about it. Negotiate with them. And this is what Russia wants. They want to, generally, we understand that all those who appeal to Western governments to negotiate with Russia at the moment are supporting Kremlin's position. So one more point, one more important thing. We have now, this is estimated, this is not very accurate statistics, but we have about 6 million Russians living in different European countries. 6 million is a lot. And of course we have Russian political refugees, supporters of the activists of the Russian emigration, but you'd be surprised how many Russians support Kremlin and Putin. This is the same in the United States, where they have about 500,000 Russians, 4 million Russians live in Asian states. This is a lot. And this, you see, this is, maybe they don't feel comfortable with Russia invading Ukraine, but at the same time they have mentality of soccer fans, of football fans. This is our country. These are our boys. They're getting killed in this war. We have to do something about it in order to help Russia to sort of sort things out. And this is also very dangerous because these people live normal life, like in Germany or in France, President Zelensky arrived in Spain, but at the same time in Barcelona, 200 Russians came out with March of Solidarity, sort of demonstrating in favor of the Russian position. We have to be careful about it. I wouldn't say that every fire, every case of flood, every construction disaster, this is the work of Russian hands, secretive services, but at the same time, the situation is very difficult. We have a number of important events or occasions which should make us especially vigilant and alert. This is NATO summit in Washington in the beginning of July. This is Olympic Games in France, and Russia is very unhappy because it is not allowed to participate. Russian team is not allowed to participate officially, and we also have European Parliament election, and they really would be sort of very happy to gather some deputies who would be also concerned about, who would say Russia also has its legitimate interests. This is, at the first glance, this is something not very serious. Okay, Russia has its interests, but in this particular situation, this is a gesture of support for President Putin's Kremlin.
Right, like you mentioned, the timing is also very important. We have a lot of very high-profile events coming up, and these people, like you mentioned again, that are kind of batting for the Russian team as if it were some kind of team sport, would like to see people with a Russian interest going into position, for example, inside the European Parliament during the election. So how much of these kind of events do you think are popping up precisely because of the Kremlin's attempt at influencing the upcoming European Union election?
Well, we have some candidates running for the European election, like former mayor of the Latvian capital Riga, Ušackas. He is believed to represent, he is not as a hardliner as there was Latvian deputy Zdaniuk, who was said to be the Russian Secret Services agent. But Ušackas is one of those who sort of believe that Russia has its own interests. So if we elect these people to European Parliament, we give them possibility to say publicly things which are probably not very constructive at the moment. At the moment, we have to be united. We have to be united. We have to help Ukraine, and we cannot allow people to have too many doubts about it, because we know that if Ukraine falls, if Ukraine loses the war, then it gives Putin even more opportunities to invade other countries and to go on with his aggressive policy.
Well, with the current waves of fires, whether they linked or not linked, with the borders being sort of seen as being threatened by the migrants from abroad, do you think it's possible that voters will turn into the far right or right political parties just because they will offer some sort of a strength solution? They will be seen, whether they're supporting Putin or not supporting Putin, whether this wave of perceived sabotage will turn Europe more into right.
This is a very good question, because Putin and Kremlin at the moment looks for allies among European right. This is not like it used to be 50 years ago, that their allies were communist and leftist parties. Now they want to be allies with right-wing politicians and populists. It's possible. People who are scared or frightened by this kind of things, they look for simple solutions. And who is offering simple solutions? Our populist friends. They say, let's do this, let's do this, let's do this. Let's sort things out with Putin. If we sort of find a compromise, if we negotiate, maybe we can calm him down. And that's dangerous. That's, of course, dangerous. Russians are able to do nasty things. This is something which really is disturbing me. This is something which happened already a month or 2 months ago, when Polish hooligans have beaten up one of the leading Russian opposition activists, Leonid Volkov, in the city of Vilnius. Imagine, Russian secret services recruit Polish gangsters, they send them to Vilnius, and they wait for Leonid Volkov, the most influential, one of the leading members of the anti-corruption foundation of Alexei Navalny. He is now one of the leaders of this organization after the death of Alexei Navalny. And they beat him up, seriously beat him up, Polish gangsters with Russian money. That's really horrible. So Russians are capable of doing those things, and they can always find people willing to execute this kind of orders, even if it's nicely paid.
Right, and you mentioned something very important back there, the word unity, and how important it is right now for Europeans to stand together in order not to be divided by this Russian threat. However, we also see the attempt at the Russians in utilizing the polarizing nature of the current European geopolitical politics. So how do we walk this fine line between identifying the actual threats coming from Russia, meanwhile not being so polarized on this topic that we started pointing at each other and just calling everyone a Russian agent?
It's going to be very difficult. It's going to be very difficult because we have to sort of use our intuition, or when we have hard facts, sometimes our secret services are able to investigate some events, and they say, listen, these people are responsible and they received instruction from this source and money, etc., etc. But we have to be careful about it, because also humans are crazy beasts, and sometimes they can do things here in Europe, even without Russian instructions, things which are useful and advantageous for the Russian regime. Mm-hmm. They don't need sometimes direct instruction. They can do those things just by their own free will. I believe that our governments, I mean European governments, if they would demonstrate some kind of unity, if they would be outspoken and they would be able to articulate the reasons for which we support Ukraine, that would be convincing for the majority of people, and that's very important. And we always will have some somebody on the margins doing crazy things.
Well, Mr. Dzięciołowski, let's hope that the voters will be guided by these enlightened, rational principles in 7 days. Thank you so much.